I think there'll be levels of intervention with all of AI. To me, AI is the new calculator. It's the cheat code. I think you're going to need to be comfortable asking a lot of questions. Obviously, curiosity podcast, right? So ask questions about things you don't know. Ask questions about your client. Everybody's there to help you. I think that's critical.
Hello, fellow insight seekers. Welcome to the Curiosity Current, a podcast that's all about navigating the exciting world of market research. I'm Stephanie Vance.
And I'm Matt Mahan. Join us as we explore the ever-shifting landscape of consumer behavior and what it means for brands like yours.
Each episode will get swept up in the trends and challenges facing researchers today, riding the current of curiosity towards new discoveries and deeper understanding.
Along the way, we'll tap into the brains of industry leaders, decode real-world data, and explore the tech that's shaping the future of research.
So whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting your feet wet, we're excited to have you on board.
So with that, let's jump right in.
Today on the Curiosity Current, we are joined by Dave Ritter, Director of Insights and Consulting at Walmart, where he's leading the charge in harnessing consumer insights and advanced analytics to shape the future of retail.
With over 15 years of experience in business strategy, customer experience, and data-driven decision-making, Dave has played a pivotal role in repositioning Walmart's great value brand and democratizing customer insight across the company. His work spans from leveraging AI to streamline NPS programs to innovating within consumer segmentation and shopper experience.
In today's conversation, we'll explore how AI is revolutionizing primary research, the balance between listening to consumers versus asking them directly, and how technology is reshaping the way businesses understand their customers.
Dave, welcome to the Curiosity Current. Thank you so much for joining us. We are excited to have you here today.
Thank you guys for having me. I've listened to all of the episodes. It's great stuff. Keep it up. Honored to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. We always like to understand a little bit more about where our guests are at in their journey and how they found themselves in the career in which they sit. So you've had quite an evolution in your career. You were deeply involved in primary research, and now you find yourself in an insights and consulting leadership role at Walmart. Can you share a bit about that journey? Tell us, how your role has shifted from researcher to consultant.
Yeah, sure. I started out in marketing. And just to give a friend's reference, I kind of did the reverse Chandler Bing. So I was in sort of a marketing creative space, and I was, I'm going to make ads. I'm going to be the idea guy, right? And I was at the University of Florida in the advertising program, in their master's program. And I previously worked in marketing during that time. I did a internship at a advertising and PR firm, and I started doing IDIs. I started helping with positioning statements, started getting into survey development. I'm like, oh, okay, I like this. So I started steering away from that creative process, and that sort of started the journey in research. And I ended up with a company called Kelton Research out in Los Angeles, California. And they're a boutique firm, and they work with global clientele, and they take you and they drop you in the deep end of the pool, and you find out very quickly if you can swim. And their differentiator is they do tons of methodologies and they go really fast. I don't know what speed they're running at, but back in the day, they would do a segmentation in 4 weeks turnaround time, like crazy fast. So I did that for a year. And then my brother had his first child in Iowa, and it was time to go back to the Midwest. So I started working at State Farm. And State Farm was really that client side trial by fire, scoping projects, assessing solutions, budgets, communicating findings with recommendations. Worked there for a long time. And then Walmart came and approached me. And that's really where the pivot started to happen, because you had broader responsibilities outside of research. With Walmart, there is no shortage of data. We have plenty of what. And we're also an EDLC company, so it's everyday low cost. So before we even have budget to talk about research, it's what do we already know? And that is a big what? It's a big question, right? And then the other thing that people say is speed of retail. I don't like when people say that, because it's usually a symptom of poor planning, but literally things are crazy and we're going super fast. And a lot of times we're in a state of perpetual reaction and constant prioritization. But differentiation really becomes anticipating. So earlier in my career, it was curiosity. It was all of these things. But now I've kind of pivoted to this consultant role where it's so much more than primary research. It's analytics, it's social listening, it's everything. And it's what's next? Where's the puck going? We always like to use that Gretzky quote of go where the puck is going, go or not, don't go where it is, right? So that's kind of the pivot in the journey in a nutshell. So
I love it. So that's super interesting. So the change was created in part by a growth in your responsibilities, but also by, it sounds like, some pressures that were new to you, at least in this different position. It sounds like the pace was very different. And I also really like the call out on, the enterprise that you're stepping into at Walmart. Very different in that you're sitting on a wealth of information already, and the company culture is such that you want to make use of the knowledge that you have before going out and conducting primary research. Sounds like that was kind of the change that happened.
it was. And interestingly, the cultures are very similar. State Farm's very nice. Walmart's very nice. One thing I would give as advice, if anybody tells you you can't work in a different industry when you're in marketing research, that's not true. You can learn any industry. I had recruiters telling me, oh, you need to work in insurance the rest of your life. Like, that is not true at all. So the pivot can be made.
Yeah, I was told that I have to be an automotive researcher for the rest of my life very early on in my career, and that has not been the case.
There you go.
Or the supplier side, client side. That's another one that I would just suggest is a false dichotomy. I think that, one makes you, better at the other, like just by nature of having seen the other side.
So you've also been at the forefront of really utilizing AI to transform primary research and consumer insights at Walmart. And super interested if you could start by giving us a high-level view of how AI is being used in market research and how you're using it to gather insights and understand consumer behavior.
Certainly. I think right now we're in a test and learn phase. I have a wealth of opinions about the future, but right now we're applying it in our day-to-day in things like end-to-end. So you think about survey writing, analysis planning, automated reporting, insight summaries and storytelling. Those are kind of the things we're testing and learning right now. And we're finding it's about 60% of the way there, kind of hit and miss, right? And I've heard that from others, right? More tactically, I'm leaning in more with coding open ends, video transcriptions, coding like that, larger literature reviews, because I mentioned earlier, it helps to summarize a lot of content. And then the last one that I think is super important is research on research. So before we go out and do anything, we ask AI what it says, and then we'll go ahead and do the research and see if it coincides. I think more importantly, to understand, is it giving us the same result? If so, that may be some things we can move over and automate. If not, then that's definitely something we need to tell the organization, because that's a huge problem. So that's sort of something that we're telling our teams across to do and start to document.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like you're doing like an internal validation of AI in the field, as it were. You're really kind of comparing it to the traditional methods and seeing if it's telling you the same results.
That's the plan, but we'll see how it goes over time, right? It's a moving target. So that's the tricky part of all of this, right?
For sure. Which leads us into our next question, where my lead in is literally with AI rapidly evolving. But it's just in another sort of context. I feel like there's a growing debate about the value of listening to consumers through passive data collection versus asking them directly via traditional sort of market research methods. I don't think that's a particularly new tension point, but I'm curious, are the trade-offs changing between these two approaches in the context of AI?
So it depends on the business problem that you're trying to solve, right? So I would say, so let me take a step back. The quality conversation you guys had previously, data piece, I think it was Roddy Knowles, is that his name? He said 30 to 40% of the data is not great. We can validate that. So I would say, if you're not having conversations with your panel provider, your research vendor, your research team, you probably have some bad data in there. The other piece of this is the social listening component. We don't know how much bad data is out there from a social listening perspective. Twitter, the estimates are 15 to 68%. So that means we've got bots saying things out there, advocating for brands, misinformation. You saw it in the election. So it's going to depend on what research question you're trying to answer and the validity of what you're looking at. So I want to make sure that's out there, because that's really important in terms of what we're talking about. But I digress, all to say that it depends on your business outcome, right?
But that's such an interesting point you're making, which is really that the same problems that exist with primary research exist with listening data, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the same problem.
It is, and not to get dystopian or anything, but at some point I worry that the internet's just going to be AI talking to AI, and we're all just like gathering it and trying to make sense of it, right? So
the bots are having the conversation. We're on the sidelines at this point. We're the spectators. Yeah. So you mentioned in your past democratizing customer insights. That's something that we hear a lot in the industry, but it's really something that you've kind of made core to the work that you've been trying to do at Walmart and elsewhere. How do you envision AI playing a role in that goal? Is it kind of enabling this real-time access to consumer insights, or what can AI do for us when we're trying to make our research more accessible to other teams?
Yeah, I think at Walmart, our insights team is very small but mighty, very skilled, right? But we're often in a position where we have to scale and democratize tons of data. So think about dashboards. And I know my clients are probably saying, I need another dashboard like I need a hole in my head. Like, we don't need more data. We don't need more dashboards. I think what I'm most excited about is when AI gets to a place where it is solving the what and it reconciles the what, because we have so many different pieces of data that are saying similar things, but there's nuance and chaos. If you think about POS data, you think about market share data, if you think about panel, all the different things, we have to reconcile that and they have to reconcile it. And ultimately, if we could get to what problem they're trying to solve and one source of truth, makes our job so much easier as researchers to help them understand the why and the who and the how. So that would be the biggest unlock and my hope for the future.
To switch topics to segmentation for a little bit, and I mean, it sounds like earlier in your career you were churning them out in 4 weeks the old-fashioned way, so good on you, probably don't even need AI. But we have a question in here that, AI's ability to sort of analyze vast amounts of data has really opened up new possibilities in consumer segmentation. And I'm curious if, in your experience or your perspective, how does AI-driven segmentation compare to, and I think in particular, like a traditional cluster-based analysis? So not an a priori segmentation where we're just doing demo cuts, but like one where we're saying, hey, let's do cluster analysis and see what's in here. Maybe we're doing an append so we have extra data. But how does it compare when we talk about these sort of AI leveraging models? Is it something where we're just creating deeper understanding because we can leverage so much more information? Or is it allowing for a different type of segmentation where we can get hyper personal and do things that we could never do in a traditional way?
I think it's the latter. I think you nailed it. I think in the short term, it's going to create speed and efficiency and scale. So, most organizations, they want this massive segmentation that everybody buys into, and they're very political. And then some SBUs have specific segmentations, but I think this allows businesses to get super granular in their business, find the variance, find that customer, that white space they're missing. Longer term, I think it does hit on some level of personalization. Like, if I want to be provocative, maybe segmentation goes away and it gets to a level of individual personalization where we don't even need segmentation anymore.
Yeah, that's a super interesting idea. I wanted to ask about this aspect to the great AI and market research debate, the tension between qualitative and quantitative data. I know when we first started thinking about how AI can be utilized in market research, a lot of thought immediately went to the qualitative side of things because it's a language, it's thinking about from the LLM's perspective, it's a language model, it's great at understanding language, it's great for qualitative data. Now we see, people are building machine learning applications to really dive into the quantitative data as well, like sales and transaction data. You mentioned POS. I'm curious, how do you see it influencing the way businesses integrate the two sides of the research house, so to speak? Is AI going to be able to help us bridge the gap between Qual and Quant and really pull it all together in that, synthesized view that we're looking for?
I don't have the answer to that holistically. I can tell you what I'm doing. My career has been predominantly 75% Quant, 25% Qual. What I'm starting to do is make this shift over to qualitative because of the ability to scale Qual in a quant way. That does numerous things for me. So what I'm trying to do is embed more open ends, more opportunities to code audio and video to get depth at scale in a quantitative way. And that's super powerful. I can leverage that in so many different ways. I can get quotes, I can get sizzle reels, I can start to get representative sample from quant. Now I know we had communities, but this is a new level of speed and agility and size that we haven't had access to before. And the other piece of this is the quality piece. If I see you on video, I know you're a real person. Now let's wait 6 months. We may get deep fake stuff and have a different conversation. But right now it makes me feel a little more comfortable and have reassurance that I have quality sample because I can actually see the person.
No, that's a great point. I mean, it can be thought of as solving two problems at once, right? You're verifying that the individual you're speaking to is a real individual while achieving that qual at scale. I think we see a lot of energy going in both those directions in the industry right now.
For sure. Yeah. I would say it's fundamentally changing the way that we do research, even here at AYTM. Just being able to do qual at scale completely changes the kinds of questions that you can ask, you know? So it's pretty remarkable stuff. Okay, to switch gears a little bit again with you, Dave, it seems like in your career you've driven initiatives to improve customer experience through customer led insights segmentation. Surprise, this is still another AI question. How do you see AI impacting not just the data gathering phase, but also that decision making phase? And I think you kind of hinted at it before a little bit too, where you were like, sometimes we ask the AI and then we're running the study and we're seeing, are these the same? And that, so it sounds like an initiative you guys are at least starting, like wading into the waters. That was that fair?
We are. And just to take a step back, when I was at State Farm, we had a process. It was inform, shape, monitor, measure. Almost all aspects of research fit into those buckets. And I feel like that's a component of AI. If I think about things maybe 5 years ago, we had drone delivery goes in inform, right? Nobody knows what's going on. We had to do some research to inform, and then it kind of goes around the cyclical process. With that, I think there'll be levels of intervention with all of AI. So there'll be no intervention where the thing about no intervention, where, a client comes in, gets an answer, comes back. The thing I'm excited most about that is a research ROI. That is the piece that I don't think anyone's ever unpacked. And what I see is we can look back and see who is making the query and what inputs went into that query. Because you think about all the different tracking studies you have and all the studies that are informing, you can go back and see how many times that tracking study actually informed a decision and tie it back and calculate an IR or an ROI. So that's what I'm excited about, the no intervention, because you're always going to need people to inform the AI model. And some of that can be automated and efficient, but you're still going to need that piece on the back of the house. Now, the middle one is moderate intervention. I feel like that's sort of where we are now a little bit, where it's going to get you almost there. It's going to get you the what in a really specific question and a really specific business case. And then the last one is full engagement. And that is where we have these seismic shifts in what's happening. Maybe it's tariffs. Maybe it's the iPhone, things that just shake the foundation of what we know. And AI just has no idea what's going on. And you will need human intervention to help the organization navigate. So I think with all of that, it's verify, verify, verify. And then you have to have a complete comprehension of the inputs and the outputs with all of this. So
That's a great framework. I love that. That's such great shorthand. I'm going to have to write that down. I think it's a really smart way to at least have some sort of systematic mechanism or heuristic you're using to evaluate how and to what extent you're going to utilize AI in a particular business problem. I think that's a really smart way to build intentionality into your process.
the thing I was thinking about this morning prior to this conversation, it's going to be interesting to listen to this conversation in 6 months or 12 months because things may be completely different. They are going so fast, but it'll be fun to listen to. We had some good ideas, right?
So do you see AI predicting consumer behavior or preference that human researchers might not be able to identify? How would that change the way the business responds?
Candidly, I think you have to have the right inputs and resources. I think certainly human beings could uncover the same ground, if not more predictive with insights, but all of that is a dependency, right? However, AI is going to expedite things, enable thoughtful iteration. And sometimes it may be met with apprehension. And I'll give you an example. I'll go back to 2008, the mortgage crisis, Michael Burry. He was looking for data points that no one else was looking at. And he was surfacing those things. And, I think things like that, you're going to have human intervention to validate, advocate, and influence. AI is not going to do that. It's only as good as the person who's ingesting the information, and it can be easily dismissed. So I didn't really answer your question. I kind of just danced around, but did you like that?
No, that's great. I think that's great perspective. I mean, it's so hard to tell where things are going to be, to your point, even 6 months from now. It's just important to always keep that human in the loop. It makes a lot of sense.
I'd also just watched, I think it's The Big Short, right? Recently. So very fresh for me. I was like, hey, I know what you're talking about.
So last AI question from my perspective. What role do you see then for human intuition and expertise in the field of primary research in the future?
To me, AI is the new calculator. It's the cheat code. And I think that doesn't mean it's not important to understand the principles of math. I think researchers are still going to have to understand how all of this works. And I think the most valuable researchers in the future of AI are going to be the ones that aren't afraid to push the boundaries of what's possible with AI and have the presence of mind to know when to intervene. There's always going to be, like I said, there's always going to be disruptive moments like COVID and things like that where we're going to have to step in.
Yeah, it's great perspective. Yeah, I mean, it's like when I get that question sometimes, hey, Matt, what do you think about AI? Is it going to take your job? I'm like, I don't really look at it that way. I mean, as a researcher, I talk a lot about how I'm meant to be curious in my role. Curiosity is important. Like, you should be curious about AI, like learn about what it can do, learn about how it can, upskill you as a professional. I think that more and more folk are starting to take on maybe a slightly more optimistic tone towards it in our industry than there was maybe a few months ago when we were in more of a doom and gloom phase. Kind of that fear might be ebbing. But maybe I'm just projecting, but that's my thought.
I really think our industry is pretty embracing of AI. And I really say that in contrast to maybe the arts and I understand why there's a difference. I really do. I don't think this is an apples to apples situation, but it always surprises me when I encounter people who are not pro AI because I feel like we work in an industry where it's very much embraced to the extent that it can be. So.
And I don't understand why it's so divisive. Just my take, but you see college professors saying don't use AI, or I posted on LinkedIn recently, if you use AI in an interview process, you'll be eliminated. That's the point. Like, I want somebody that is a guru using AI, and if you're using processes that can be gamed with AI, change your processes. That's a you problem. So I'm excited about it. I think as when we get into leadership positions, it's important to be the old person in the room saying, I used to manually code open ends and I used to do text analytics and this is way better, right? So
that's such a great point. You don't see programmers saying, I really wish we still had punch cards. Like, I don't see anyone saying that.
No, we have a duty to inform. You're right. I love it. Well, Dave, to wrap us up, we always like to ask a couple questions. The first one, especially after one of the last things you said, I feel like I might have an idea, but maybe you'll surprise me. What is one piece of advice that you would offer to someone who's just coming into the field of, consumer insights?
can I give a couple?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're going to need to be comfortable asking a lot of questions. Obviously, curiosity podcast, right? So ask questions about things you don't know, ask questions about your client. Everybody's there to help you. I think that's critical. The second part is be prepared to and share a point of view. So if you're sharing insights, be ready to have a point of view in anything you're talking about. The next one would be think like a customer and your client. I think where those two meet is where you can start to anticipate their needs. So with everything happening with tariffs, think about what questions your client's going to ask. Think about what's happening in the market and how that's going to affect the customer. And then you can get in front of research plans and insights that are going to inform your client to help the customer. And then lastly, allocate some time to be proactive, test and learn, conduct research on research. We're not doing our jobs if we're not trying to break something. So that would be my takeaway to a new researcher. So
skate to where the puck is going, to your earlier point. And my last question is always, what's one shift that you think we'll see over the next few years and how brands are using consumer insights to drive strategy?
I think we'll see much faster threat and opportunity detection. At State Farm, it was kind of primitive, but we called it event management. So it was kind of a situation where it's like, if this happens, then this. So think about like a claim, then it would execute A, B, C, D. I think from a brand perspective, this will sort of not replace brand management, but you're going to have all these things in place to manage crises, but also opportunities. Think about Wendy's from a social media perspective. Think about recalls, all the things you have to manage. AI can step in and kind of run point and if not do things whenever, that trust is granted. I spoke a lot about this earlier, but some of this could entail some facets of research planning in terms of that shape, inform, monitor, measure. So if you get in a brand situation like, hey, we need to do a brand refresh, here's what you need to do, that kind of thing. So
I love that as thinking about AI developing into this sort of like tactical awareness power. I have not heard that perspective yet. That's interesting.
Well, Dave, we appreciate your time so much today. This has been a fascinating conversation. Can't wait for it to come out so others can hear it. Anything else from your side?
No, thank you guys. I appreciate the time. Keep doing this. It's great. We only get better if we talk to each other and share ideas. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. The Curiosity Current is brought to you by AYTM.
To find out how AYTM helps brands connect with consumers and bring insights to life, visit AYTM.com.
And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to The Curiosity Current in Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.